Hello everyone, I am April Ansi Peralta and my topic is all about East African literature. So in East African literature, it refers to the body of written and oral works created by authors from East Africa, which includes countries like Kenya, Uganda, Tanzania, Somalia, and Rwanda. And of course, the Burundi and Ethiopia. So these literatures captures the diverse cultures, languages, histories, and social issues of the region. So here's a key aspect of East African literature. So the first one is the oral traditions. So in this, there is East African literature, and the East African literature has deep roots in oral storytelling like or including the folk tales, myths, songs, and poems. So these traditions preserved history, taught moral values, and conveyed social norms long before written literature became common. In colonial and post-colonial influence in East African literature, so there is colonial period. So during colonial rule, European languages, particularly English, became the primary medium for education and reading in East Africa. So this shift impacted how literature was produced and consumed, leading to a blending of African and the European cultural elements. While in early East African literature, it began to reflect themes of resistance to colonial oppression, pride in African culture, and a growing desire for independence. So the authors used their works to criticize colonial rule and to advocate for freedom. In post-independence era, after independence in the 1960s, East African writers turned their attention to themes of national identity, cultural restoration, and nation building. So, the literature from this period often addressed the complex challenges of establishing new governments, social inequalities, and the lingering effects of colonialism on African society. Writers like Kuki Wachango and Grace Ogot became prominent voices exploring these issues while also promoting African languages and cultural pride in their works. So, in summary, East African literature evolved from themes of resistance during colonial rule to focus on the identity, unity, and social justice in the post-colonial period. So, that it reflecting the changing realities and aspirations of the region. Here's are the example of notable authors and their works. So one of the example of notable authors in East African and their works is si Kuki Wa Chango work. So his work is Green Up Wet, and this is all about a novel that explores themes of betrayal, sacrifice, and the struggle for independence in Kenya during British colonial rule. So, the next one is si Nuruddin Farah. So, his work is The Maps or Maps, and um, the Maps is all about, or it is a novel that explores themes of identity and belonging through the story of a young Somali boy navigating life in war-torn Somalia and Ethiopia. So, in Nuruddin Farah, he is a Somali author, and ay Kuki Wa Chango is a Kenya author. So, the next one is si Gorty Kumuhendo. So, kay Gorty Kumuhendo is an Ugandan author, and his work is called The First Daughter. So, her famous work, The First Daughter, is a novel that explores the complexities of family dynamics, political corruption, and the personal struggles faced by a young woman in post-colonial Uganda. So, the next one is si Yusuf Dawood. So, si Yusuf Dawood is an Kenyan author, a doctor, and his work is known for The Man Who Knew Too Much. The Man Who Knew Too Much is a novel also that combines elements of mystery and suspense while exploring themes of love, betrayal, and the complexities of life in modern Kenya. And that's all for the East African literature.
Hi, good day, this is Ansel, and today I will report about the West African literature, a rich tapestry in culture and identity. Let me please introduce to you about the West African literature. West African literature is rich and diverse, reflecting the region's complex cultures, histories, and traditions. So here are some key aspects of notable authors. Traditions, folk tales and proverbs, essential for cultural transmission featuring moral lessons and communal values. The griots, traditional storytellers who preserve history and culture through oral narratives and music. Second is written literature. Pre-colonial literature included historical chronicles and poetry in local language. Example given here is the Yoruba and Hausa and Igbo. Colonial and post-colonial literature, emergence of novels, poetry, and essay reflecting the impact of the colonialism. Notable authors for the West African literature. The first one is Wole Soyinka, a Nigerian Nobel Prize winner known for plays and poetry addressing political issues. And the second one is Chinua Achebe, a Nigerian that things falls apart explore the effects of the colonialism. The third one is Ata Aido, a Ghana focuses on women experiences and feminism. The fourth one is Ngugi wa Thiong'o, a Kenyan addresses that to colonialism and a cultural identity. So this is some of the key themes that you need to remember about the West African literature. First one is the colonialism and identity. This is the exploration of the legacies of colonialism on African societies. The second one, tradition versus modernity. Tensions between the traditional values and modern influences in family and community life. Third one is gender and feminism. Examination of women's roles and challenges in society. This is some of the modern trends about the West African literature. First one is diaspora literature. It means that the writers from the West African diaspora explores themes of migration and identity. The second one is digital literature. Online platforms offer new forms of expression and reaching wider audiences. About the conclusion, to summarize the topic that I have about the West African literature, it is evolving landscape. West African literature continues to adapt and grow, reflecting the region's dynamic, culture, and ongoing social challenges. Cultural significance, it remains a vital form of expression, shaping understanding of identity and history. Oh hi, thank you so much for listening. I hope you learned something from me about my topic about the West African literature. Once again, this is Ansel Joe Arlina from 4HE2, and thank you so much for watching.
Good morning. So now we'll be tackling about South African literature. So South Africa has a rich and diverse literary history, with realism until relatively recently dominating works of fiction. So in South African literature, realism was widely used in their literary works because this became a powerful tool for their resistance, truth-telling, and cultural preservation of their own country. So the first fictional works in South Africa was written by colonial writers. And dahil hindi nga okay yung trato ng mga colonizers sa mga Africans, they portrayed Africans as savage and primitive in the stories that they wrote. And of course, silang mga colonizer yung mga naging main character. One of the example of fiction that was written by colonial writer is King Solomon's Mines, which Rider Haggard wrote. So, si Rider Haggard is a British author na tumira sa South Africa. And si Alan Quatermain naman yung main character na naisulat niya. And he portrays Alan as brave, resourceful, and possessed a strong moral, which is Haggard's ideal colonial gentleman. So now, let's move on to the South Africans' notable authors. So the first one is Zinziswa or Zinzi Mandela. If you're familiar with Nelson Mandela, the first black president of South Africa, Zinzi is one of his daughters. Alright, so Zinzi was an activist, especially during the anti-apartheid struggle. So, yung apartheid is a legal system which was implemented in South Africa to institutionalize racial segregation and discrimination towards black people. So, ayun yung naranasan ni Zinziswa Mandela. Kaya, ang mga naisulat niya is more on freedom, resistance, and social identity. Of her work is Black as I Am. So, it is about their pride their pride in black identity and the struggle against racial oppression. So the next one is Bessie Head. So just like Zinzi Mandela, she also experienced the apartheid system wherein nakaranas din siya ng racism and discrimination against white people, against dun sa mga colonizer nila. Kaya naman yung novels, short stories, and essays, it explored themes of identity, racial discrimination, exile, spirituality, and the struggle for freedom. Just like the prisoner who wore glasses. So, ito is about sa isang prisoner na kinaibigan niya yung isang white warden. Then, dahil nga kinaibigan niya to, nakilala niya to at nalaman niya yung mga insecurities na ito. And yung insecurities na yun, yung emotions na nararamdaman ng white warden na yun is ginamit niya para makagain siya ng power, para maisahan niya yung white warden na yun. Then, third one is Nadine Gordimer. So, Nadine Gordimer was also an activist who campaigned anti-apartheid. So, she wrote novels and short stories that explores complex issues like apartheid, race, and social justice. Pero ang kaibahan naman nito sa ibang mga author is ang mga fiction na sinulat niya is parang may reversal. Kumbaga, yung mga black people, yung may power against dun sa mga white people. Kaya naman hindi natuwa yung mga white people dito, and kaya yung ibang mga books niya is naban dahil nga parang nagiging racist daw siya sa mga white people. And also, yung may mga stories din siya na parang nag-uudyok daw ng revolution. Alright, so now let's move on to the literature in Russia. So, Russian literature refers to the literature of Russia and to the Russian language literature of several independent nations, once a part of what was historically Russia or Soviet Union. Noon pa man, during the Middle Age in Russia, parang 9th to 15th century yan, is meron ng mga epics and chronicles na naisusulat. Pero ang gamit pa ritong language is Old Russian or Old Church Slavonic. So, during the reign of Peter the Great, is nagkaroon ng Age of Enlightenment. So, nagkaroon ng modernization, and also nag-adapt din sila ng mga Western European practices na nakatulong sa kanila para umunlad. And isa na rito yung naimpluwensyahan din sila ng Romanticism. Kaya naman, in the Age of Enlightenment is Romanticism yung isa sa mga naging sikat na literary genre nila. So, during the Golden Era or Age of Enlightenment, there are notable authors na talagang nakilala during that time. So, one of them is Vasily Zukovsky, and he is also credited with introducing the Romantic movement in Russia, which is yung nabanggit ko kanina. So, one of his work is Water Nymph, and it is about the nymph's unrequited love about the human world. Next one is Fyodor Dostoevsky, wherein he explored human condition in the troubled political, social, and spiritual atmosphere. So, mas kilala siya for his exploration of psychological and philosophical themes like in his work Crime and Punishment, wherein ito yung about sa isang character na pumatay ng tao na hate niya. And then, after niya gawin yung murder na yon, nakaramdam siya ng guilt, konsensya, at pagsisisi sa ginawa niya. The last one is Anton Chekhov. He excelled in writing short stories and plays. He focused on the everyday lives and struggles of ordinary people. So, one of Anton Chekhov's well-known literature is The Three Sisters. Pinakita rito sa Three Sisters yung mga unfulfilled dreams and also yung mga gender roles during their time. That would be all for our lesson, and thank you for listening.